I think has a great mission. They basically encourage bright and promising high school students to take that leap year, so they go and they travel and they do something wonderful and productive to become great leaders of the future. And I just think it's a wonderful idea. I met Abby in New York last year at a conference, and she talked about innovation there. And so that's what she's going to talk about here. So that's what we're going to
I'm delighted to be here. I actually want to start with a short video on the theme and flavor of technology and innovation. We've been working with a local advertising company called SF Heat. They've been helping us pro bono, and this is hot off the press, so you're among the first to see it. I'll be curious your reaction.
Yeah, I should know. Memories are mine. Why should I go when everybody's trying? Tomorrow I don't know, so tell me sure about it. Tomorrow I don't know, there's no doubt about it. We can be strong, I say, we can be strong. We can be strong, I say, we can be strong.
It's short and snappy, and I'll say that this is the first time that we've actually had a professional video, and I'm very fortunate to work with a young team and with millennials in our program who typically create our videos, our promotional pieces for us. So let me open. Started loading. And so what I really meant to say as I arrived was that when Regina invited me to speak to all of you and gave me a sense of what you're doing, I tried to politely decline. I felt like I am the least likely speaker in San Francisco to talk to a group of techies. And I think about the things where I need tech support, so like calling my younger brother to sync my iPhone to my Mac and all of this. And so when I thought about what I could possibly say to all of you that was going to be interesting and useful and somehow engaging, given that you were likely leaps and bounds ahead of me in anything technological in terms of expertise, what I decided I wanted to do, and let's see if the slides actually. Hold on a minute. Just last. Yeah, no, but it's active fun, which is exactly what I was trying to say.
Tech support coming.
Tech support, yeah, in the good room here. So what I actually decided to do, rather than pretend I know anything about technology that I don't, is actually turn the question out to all of you. And the question is this: how can we use technology at Global Citizen Year to help scale our impact? And so what I wanted to do was take about 20 minutes, I don't think anybody has an attention span longer than that, I certainly don't, to introduce you to the work that we're doing at Global Citizen Year, to some of our fellows and participants from our first couple of years, and then open it up to questions and ideas that relate to this theme of what can we do using technology in creative new ways to tell the stories of the students in our program and to equip them to really accelerate the impact that they're having in their community placements. So, as Regina said, I'm the founder and CEO of Global Citizen Year, and we believe that young people all have the potential to find and live their passion. And so each year we recruit and train high school graduates from diverse backgrounds across the country. We support them through a transformative learning year, or a bridge year as we like to call it, between high school and college. We place them in apprenticeships in Africa, Latin America, soon to be Asia, because we know that young people who have opportunities to have this kind of first-hand immersive experience with the world get in touch with something different around their sense of purpose, potential, and really their ability to lead change and be innovators. And so when I think about where this all came from and why I do what I do, for me it started actually when I finished high school. And I called the Peace Corps. So I had opportunities to travel as a kid. I knew that I learned best through real experience rather than just in a classroom. And so the Peace Corps says, little girl, nice to hear from you. We will see you after college. Call us back in 4 years, as they'll continue to say. And I was so frustrated, and I found it ironic. So what is it that in this country at age 18, you can join the military, you can do some kind of religious mission or service, but to do service in a civilian capacity in another part of the world, they ask you to wait until after college. So I was frustrated, but I was determined. So I put on a backpack, spent some time in Latin America. I worked in Brazil, where I was working with street children, and in Nicaragua, where I helped a community start their first library, which is actually what we see here. This little Cabritos was having access to books for the first time. But the experience was really not about this in the end, as many of you, I'd imagine many of you have sort of had a formative travel experience of some form that have shaped your life and the work you do and the things you care about. So this was that experience for me. It reset my sense of who I was, what I cared about, what I wanted to study in college, and consequently everything I've done with my professional life. And so the question for me at that point, which is the question I've now spent the last 15, 18 years trying to answer, is what will it take in this country for this kind of experience to be a standard expectation, a norm, in how young Americans are prepared for college and for life in what is undeniably a global world. So the organization that I have founded is a not-for-profit, and what we like to say is that is our tax status, but not our management style. And in line with that, one of the things we care a lot about is being deliberate in understanding the nature of the problem we're trying to solve, and not just doing what we do to feel good about it and pat ourselves on the back, but how do we actually create an impact, move the needle, and to do so we need to actually start with the end in mind and figure out what problem we're trying to solve with our intervention. And so we've all got a sense that our schools are not doing a particularly good job of preparing kids for college or for careers, but the statistics are pretty staggering. So today it is the case that a third of college freshmen don't come back for a second year. At the same time, on average, it takes kids 6 years to get through four-year institutions. And if you happen to be minority, low income, first in your family to go to college, in those 6 years, only 8% get through. So what's going on? Emotional health is at an all-time low among college freshmen, stress at an all-time high. And one of the things that doesn't necessarily make the headlines is that this is actually prevalent across a broad range socioeconomically. So kids who've grown up in privilege, often with parents who've given them what they need, haven't necessarily had opportunities to fail, to test their grit or to develop the resilience that they need to get through college and be successful. So at the same time, there's a second area of problem that we're trying to solve, and this is the fact that we're not preparing kids for a global world. Today, 9% of English-speaking Americans speak a second language. This is compared to 54% of our European peers. Half of our congressional leaders don't have a passport. Isn't it time that to represent us in federal office, holding a passport should be a baseline requirement? Less than 1% of Americans are ever going to meet anybody around the world who's living in a condition of extreme poverty. And nearly 2/3 of business executives say that college graduates arrive without the skills they really need in a global economy. So what's missing? What's broken? What's not working? Common sense and research both lead us to these set of four characteristics. We all know that in our own experiences, the things that have allowed us to be successful at what we do are character traits that are not super likely to have been taught in a classroom in a traditional setting. It's things like resilience and grit, self-awareness, empathy. So how are we going to transform education in this country, reimagine it so that we are actually preparing young people with the core skills they need to be successful in college and well beyond? And so Global Citizen Year has been designed to actually address these four issues. So here's how it works. Each year we recruit and train a diverse core of emerging leaders from high schools across the country. And they spend the summer mobilizing local resources in their hometowns. So they have the baseline requirement of needing to sign on 100 local supporters to follow their social media when they're in the field, and to raise $2,500 toward the cost of their participation. So that by the time the summer's over and they begin their fall training, they actually have some skin in the game. They've made an effort towards something that they now own. And whether their parent wrote the check or the donor has underwritten the experience, they all feel like they've put something toward really making this experience their own, and something that they value. We know that we value what we work for. And we're really proud that in these first 3 years, over 87% of our kids have received some level of financial aid from us. So I can talk a little bit later about the business model. But after the kids spend the summer in their hometowns, they come together for a fall training boot camp. And we've hosted the training at Stanford. And it's an opportunity for them to meet each other from communities across the country and to develop that sense of cohort that follows them over the course of the year and well beyond. And I'm delighted to say that one of our alums is actually in the audience with us right now, and he can probably answer some of your questions at the end better than I can. But fall training is really oriented toward helping kids develop a sense of entrepreneurial leadership, an idea and a set of frameworks around global development, and an orientation about social innovation that really sets the tone for the experiences that they then have as they travel to their country posts. So they arrive in country. We currently have programs in Senegal, Brazil, and Ecuador. The first month is an immersive language training. So they are having the opportunity to speak and practice and learn. We partner with local educational institutions. We work with universities, we work with the Peace Corps and the State Department, and really expose them to leaders across sectors who can broaden their context for the experience that they then have as they ship out to communities. So I don't know about you, but this is not exactly what it looked like when I arrived as a freshman in college. So they then spend the next 8 months in communities. They live with a family, which becomes one of the most important ways for them to develop a local set of relationships and to be deeply immersed in just the daily rhythms of life. And one of the things that has been most striking to me in our first couple of years is how much our fellows learn through this extended stay in one family. Virtually everybody observes a birth and a death and the whole cycle of just daily life and activities, and they participate in understanding what some of the constraints and challenges that these communities face look like and feel like and even taste like as no one's eating from the Chebuchen bowl around the table. So they're living with families and they're working as apprentices with local host organizations. And so when we think about sort of why the Peace Corps turned me down, it was primarily because I was young, idealistic, but had no skills to speak of. And so when we ask ourselves this same question of what can our kids do that is actually of use to our local partners, we need to be really careful there. Because we're not sending 18-year-olds out, some of whom have never traveled, many of whom don't yet speak the local language, to be community development workers. They're not there to shake things up. They're there to observe, learn, participate. We're very intentional with the language we use around an apprenticeship. But what we've seen in these first 3 years is that there are a core set of skills that all of our kids actually bring, that every high school graduate in this country has by virtue of having grown up here and gone to school in this context. And these skills are that they all speak English, they're all young, and so they can work with other young people as coaches and role models and mentors. And, bringing it back to all of you, they are, relatively speaking, very techy. So some of the things that we've seen in these first couple of years are kids training kids and teachers and farmers to use the internet for the first time. Walking into a school in rural Senegal and seeing the dusty box of USAID-donated computers and being the first person to figure out how to actually plug them in and wire it up so that teachers can now use Google and Wikipedia for their lesson planning. We've had examples of fellows working with public health workers to actually systematize and put into Excel the medical records for the patients in the clinic. And here's actually Mariella, who was working on a fuel-efficient cook stove project, where her job was going around to where these stoves had been installed and using GPS coordinates to track where the projects were and to actually monitor how much fuel, less fuel was being used after the clean stoves were installed. And that then was a carbon offset that enabled this social enterprise to continue funding itself.